So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tadas Jakštas, and I'm senior cybersecurity consultant and a team lead, leading a team of experts at NRD Cybersecurity for the provision of capacity building as well as CERT establishment services. It's my great pleasure to be the moderator and to welcome all of you to this session, which is entitled Hope for the Best, Prepare for the Worst, Developing National Cyber Crisis Management Plan. The session is led by NRD Cybersecurity, a private company which specializes on the provision all around the world. Just also let me acknowledge that NRD Cybersecurity this year is celebrating its 10th year of anniversary. So within these 10 years as a company, we have implemented projects in more than 50 countries, providing capacity building services and helping nations in Americas, in Caribbean, in Africa, Asia, Europe to develop and to modernize their cybersecurity ecosystems. Going to today's session, our main objective today is to share with you some of the practical insights and experience from 4 different countries on cyber crisis preparedness and management. Before I jump into the introduction of the panelists and starting the discussion, let me frame a little bit the discussion outlining the key topics that we're going to discuss today. And I would like to start by discussing the threat landscape that we are all in today. In recent years, the threat landscape has become as complex and as challenging as ever. As a result of the growing digitalization, the acceleration of IoT, the significant increase of data economy, cybercriminal groups are keen in exploiting every opportunity to steal, encrypt data for the sake of financial reward. In addition, the growing geopolitical insecurity in the world underlines the fact that enemies and adversaries are more often using cyber as a means to collect intelligence or even to conduct disinformation and sabotage operations. As a result of deteriorating threat landscape, large-scale cyber incidents are no longer a science fiction, but a reality which surrounds us and affects our way of life. And let me give you a few concrete examples. In recent years, we have seen significant attacks against critical infrastructures, such as, for example, Colonial Pipeline attack, which disrupted oil supplies in the United States. We have also seen significant increase in ransomware attacks against financial and governmental institutions all around the world. Last year, for example, Costa Rica became the first country ever to declare state of emergency due to a massive cyber attack against its state institutions. In addition to that, the cyber attack against Albania has led to a situation where, for the first time ever, a country has completely severed its political and diplomatic relations due to a cyber attack. As far as our response is concerned, I would say that in the last 5 to 8 years, the main activities in the field of capacity building have been mainly focusing on building relevant institutions, structures, authorities, such as national CERTs, competent authorities, improving legislations, and raising awareness. While these activities are extremely important, they are not sufficient in the face of significantly growing cyber threats. So the question that really comes into play is what else we can do in order to be more resilient. In recent years, many countries all around the world have started to invest more time and effort in developing effective national cyber crisis management frameworks. which are often built on 4 key pillars. And let me mention a few of them. The first is clear legal base, which defines what cyber crisis is and sets legal responsibilities for different stakeholders to act in the pre, during, and post-crisis situations. The second pillar that I would like to mention is the developing of national cyber crisis management plans, which identifies key stakeholders at operational, strategic, technical levels, as well as describes key crisis management procedures and information sharing channels. And the last pillar is preparedness measures. What preparedness measures we take to be more resilient, to be better prepared to manage cybersecurity events, what lessons we identify, and how we integrate those identified lessons into the learning process in order to improve our efficiency, in order to improve our capacities and capabilities. So discuss how different countries approach cyber crisis management and to share some practical experience in the preparation and managing of major cyber incidents. We have 4 brilliant speakers today with us. And I would like to start this introduction by Samitria. So we have Ms. Samitria McKinney, the Director of the National CERT of Bahamas. We have Mr. Carlos Leonardo, the Director of National CERT of Dominican Republic. We have Mr. Sanusi Drame, Director of Cybersecurity at the Ministry of Communications and Economic Affairs at the Gambia. And last but not least, Mr. Tariq Barkatullah, the Founder Director of Governmental CERT of Bangladesh. Samitri, I would like to start with you. And the first that I would like to discuss with you is the question of roles and responsibilities in cyber crisis management. And in particular, the roles of responsibilities of national CERT in this area. We all know that there is no one prescribed approach or modus operandi in terms of that would say how national CERT should act in that domain. We know that, we have CERTs which are more focused on technical assistance, technical level, providing support to the affected parties. But we also have CERTs which are more focusing on information exchange, on coordination, and so on. We know that Bahamas has been progressing a lot recently in cybersecurity by building structures, enacting regulations in this area. In particular, we know that the National CERT project, although it's still ongoing, but it's going very, very rapidly, and you are about to achieve operational readiness. However, looking down the road, while the National CERT is still progressing, I would like to ask you what roles and responsibilities you would envisage for the National CERT of Bahamas in relation to cyber crisis and major incident in the country.
Thank you, Tadas, and thank you everyone this afternoon. To provide some context, it's important for me to share the landscape of the Bahamas. So the Bahamas is an archipelago of islands, some 700. However, we have 16 major islands, and that requires coordination. Also, as you mentioned, the CERT is just now being established officially. We have, kudos to us and everyone else in the Bahamas, a reception and ribbon cutting coming up next month, and so we're happy for that. But when we talk about future plans for the CERT, it's important for us to think about small island states like the Bahamas and our limited resources. Currently in the Bahamas, the CERT is it. We are the authority for cybersecurity, and we have the role per our recently approved national cybersecurity strategy of not only developing that strategy, but driving the key objectives of that strategy. And one key objective is cyber crisis management. So it's important too to note that the Bahamas is a hurricane-prone country. So taking those two things under consideration, there's the NEMO, the National Emergency Management Agency, and then there's the CERT, who manages not only the strategy, but also serves as a focal point for cybersecurity response for both the public and private sector and the driver of the strategy. Now, it's important that we, the Bahamas, lean on an already established framework, which is our National Emergency Management Agency. In there are our frameworks, protocols, structures, communication, all of those that's already established that we can use almost immediately for the purpose of, one, crisis management, two, cyber readiness and testing, because many of the players are the same. And so in the Bahamas, and from where I sit, that's what we're thinking. We want to make sure that the CERT holds the role of coordinating the cybersecurity efforts, and we are an advisory in that body, but we are using already established mechanisms when it comes to emergency response.
Okay. Thank you so much, Samitria. I would like to turn to Carlos and ask you about the definition of cyber crisis in the Dominican Republic. As we all know, there is no one single definition when it comes to what is cyber crisis. Many countries could have different definitions based on the risk appetite, based on the thresholds that they provide. I wonder, in Dominican Republic, do you define cyber crisis? And if you have, what thresholds, maybe you can elaborate a little bit, you use in terms of definition?
Thank you, Dada. Good afternoon, everyone. I ask everyone to put your interpretation device for two reasons. One, because in Spanish I can speak from the bottom of my heart, with a heart, real heart feeling. And number two, because the interpreters have done a very great job today, and nobody's using them. So I want to ask an applause for them, please. So having said that, I will switch to Spanish. I hope everybody is okay now. Sí, diría que lo más importante que hemos considerado en la República Dominicana para establecer esa estrategia y ese plan de manejo de crisis ha sido establecer la gobernanza, ese modelo de gobernanza. Todo empieza por definición de roles antes de una matriz de escalación y de definición de criterios. Teniendo esa gobernanza, hemos tenido muy claro que cuando hablamos de cybercrisis, al final tenemos que pensar en seguridad, el bienestar de las personas como fin último. Y cuando ya escalamos a la crisis, tenemos que quitar la palabra cyber, porque al final estamos hablando de seguridad y de estabilidad nacional. Y eso, partiendo de ese punto, hemos podido delimitar o definir cuáles son esos criterios para poder elaborar esa matriz de escalación. Primero, ¿qué servicio, qué tantas personas afecta ese servicio que puede o que ha sido afectado por un incidente? Segundo, ¿cómo puede esto generar riesgos sistémicos que pueden ir evolucionando y teniendo un impacto mayor a pesar de que el incidente pueda ser inicialmente pequeño? Y tercero, ¿qué tantos sectores transversales y organismos a nivel nacional pueden verse afectados por este incidente? Esos son los tres elementos claves que hemos definido, que hemos establecido para declarar una crisis. ¿Qué tanto puede afectar o impactar? Como dije al principio, las organizaciones, ¿cuántos servicios han beneficiado de ellas? ¿Cuántas personas pueden verse afectadas si ese servicio falla? Segundo, independientemente cuál sea el sector que sea afectado, ¿cómo puede afectar a los demás? Y tercero, inclusive, ¿cómo puede mediáticamente esto afectar la estabilidad y el curso normal del Estado?
Thank you so much, Carlos. I would like to ask now Sanusi about the Gambia's experience. And what I would like to ask you is about the governance structure for crisis management. And in particular, you know, the connection and the cooperation between strategic and operational level. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit from the Gambia's experience? How do you ensure that cooperation from strategic, operational to technical level is ongoing from your side?
Thank you very much, Tedas. I think that is a very important question because when you are faced with a cyber crisis, stakeholder engagement, the roles, procedures need to be clearly defined and pursued. From an operational perspective, we need to ensure that we have effective capabilities and a mechanism in place also to ensure that we communicate to stakeholders to kind of mitigate the incident. So in the Gambia, in the Western African Regional Digital Integration Program, which is a World Bank funded project, in 2024, we have a series of activities that we plan to implement to kind of bolster our capabilities when it comes to crisis management. So one of that is to make sure we designate cybersecurity exercise planning for the national CERT in collaboration with the National Disaster Management Agency and other critical stakeholders, so that when a cyber crisis erupts, we know how to go about tackling it. But it is incumbent upon having first a cyber contingency plan and a cyber crisis plan. So those are part of the activities that we want to make sure we implement. So from a technical perspective, we need to understand our landscape, our threat landscape. And to do that, you have to have capabilities like honeypots. You have to have threat intelligence capabilities, a cybersecurity operating center. So all of these things are being planned for us to implement in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And building maybe also, Sanusi, on the information that you just provided, and especially on the crisis management plan, as you mentioned, what are the essential elements that you see are for building that crisis management plan? I mean, how do you approach that, and what particular aspects you think are needed to be addressed in that plan?
Yes, normally at our ministry, when we formulate policy strategies and plans, we make sure it is through an inclusive process. So we kind of first identify who are the critical stakeholders that can have a relevant input into the plan. Now, you need to ensure also the roles and responsibilities are clearly defined. After definition, they need to be clearly communicated. And you have a sequence of interventions to address in a likelihood of a cyber crisis. Now, when a cyber crisis happens, it becomes easier. You don't wait until when a crisis happens and now you want to define the roles and responsibilities. Because at the time you are at some kind of a chaotic stage. There's a lot of pressure. So to bring stakeholders on board and to have this uptake is kind of a little bit challenging. Although for us, we were able to do that. But these are some of the lessons learned. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tariq, I would like to turn to you now. And my question is, what are the key operational and strategic challenges for countries like Bangladesh to effectively respond to cyber crisis situations?
Thank you. The world and you are all aware that in Bangladesh we have a central bank heist. They tried to take away $1 billion, but because of some spelling mistakes, they took away $100 million. So looking at that heist, we think that that was the greatest awareness campaign that has taken place in the country and the world over. And the first thing that when the cyber heist took place or the other cyber attacks took place in our country, the one thing is very common, that the victims never try to hide the information, and they don't want to reveal it for the sake of their job and for the sake of the reputations of the institutions and for other social issues that may arise because of these negative news. So in Bangladesh, what we have done is that we have documented the rules, guidelines, and made it public. But still we found that nobody really cares about it. They are still hiding it. So what we now do is have a regular meeting chaired by the Honorable Minister for the ICT, and then and the next alternate months, and meeting chaired by the ICT Permanent Secretary to ascertain what is happening in the critical information institutions and what challenges they face, how they are dealing with it, and what are the resource constraints and things like that. So everything is documented. And under our law, there is a National Cyber Security Council headed by the Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh. And all these information that we get regularly from the constituents are placed before the Honorable Prime Minister for coordination and for necessary instructions from the highest level in the government, so that the people implement it. And in these meetings, law enforcement agencies are also invited, and they are part of this council. So it means involving the highest authority of the country, the law enforcement, and the important critical infrastructures representatives in that meeting get the clear instructions from the government. And later on, these are followed up if there is any incidents in the cabinet meeting which take place every week. So we have to build a very strong accountability processes so that the things are properly monitored. The laws, the rules, the guideline, and will not be helpful unless we get it monitored properly every day, and these are taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. From what you have said, I think what you mentioned is really that the heist was that wake-up call that really allowed for Bangladesh to create certain structures and policies which are needed to be in place in order to be more effective in that response. Continuing a little bit on that topic of the experience in terms of operational experience, in terms of handling large-scale cybersecurity incidents or crises, we know that Bangladesh is not the only country which has been recently affected by cybersecurity attacks and significant attacks. Last year, we also know that Gambia has become a victim of a major cyber attack against central bank. Sanusi, I would like to ask you, could you tell us a little bit more about the process of managing this particular incident from a national perspective, from a national strategic perspective? In particular, the collaboration you had with partners, with CERT community in general.
Yes, that was very true. In 2022, the central bank was attacked through a ransomware incident. Actually, the first and foremost thing that we banked on was our existing political will. We had a minister appointed by the time who made cybersecurity as part of its most priority pillars as a cross-cutting pillar. So when the incident happened, we had to brief management and him about the incident. Then we were asked to verify, because the verification process is very important, whether really that is what happened. So we went on a verification process, we reported back, and then we formulated a stakeholder team, a 15-man team. This 15-man team consists of law enforcement, the CERT, the national CERT, the technical experts within the institution itself, and the technical experts within the ministry. Then we used the minister as a liaison for us from the technical team that was formulated with the executive. So we had constant reporting through the minister of live updates of what was happening. So when we arrived at the scene, we had to divide ourselves into roles and separate roles. Everyone knew what we had to do. Some had to mitigate the attack, some had to do vulnerability assessment, some had to collect the electronic evidence. Now, as that was happening, there was another team that was doing the reporting, preparing the preliminary report on the fly. So we needed to do one thing also, to restore what we call public confidence. And to do that, we had to face the media. Because at the time, there was so much disinformation and misinformation. So we had to correct, but make sure there is no panic, but also convey information that is adequate and not excessive, not to jeopardize the investigation process. So this is what we did. So in 48 hours, we were able to contain the incident, isolate this affected system, and luckily, the attack did not affect the payment systems, but it was a file server, operational file server. So we also banked on existing cooperations between regional SATs or other countries' SATs, like Togo SAT, Benin SAT, Tunisia SAT, the first community itself. So we were on the fly. The reporting team was conducting interviews and sharing information that was adequate at the time and getting technical assistance. But one key thing that we did, what was a major success, we banked on already existing capacity whilst utilizing regional and international resources as well as expertise. So this really helped us to contain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanusi. Building on that as well, I would like to ask you, Carlos, about your experience in handling also significant cybersecurity incident that your country faced last year. We know that the country was affected also by several ransomware attacks. Can you elaborate on that process as well, and how different or similar it was that was mentioned by Sanusi now? Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to our last position. I will switch to English again. Yeah, it's kind of the same process. In our case, we got the best results because, first of all, the first thing that we did when we were establishing that process in the crisis management and the protocol with the different stakeholders was sitting down to drink beer together with all the stakeholders. And that's the first step that you have to do, because you have to build that process and that trust-based relation. And actually, in this case, the most important thing, the other most important thing after the beer process is to have a clear definition of the roles and the responsibility, who do what, who share what with who, and we have that process very, very good established in the governance model. In our opinion, in my opinion, the key performance is not about if you can stop or not the incident. It's about how quickly you can respond and recover from the incident. And that's what you have to establish in the process. When you have a very clear definition about who do what and what is the responsibility of each one, you will have the most quickly response process that you can establish in the government model.
Okay. Thank you so much. I would like to ask Sumitria now you about, as we already touched on the subject, we know that international cooperation or regional cooperation is extremely important when it comes to incident response and management in terms of sharing information, getting some operational assistance, of course, because cyber crisis is often cross-border, it's often cross-sectorial, cross-border, cross-national. I would like to ask you, looking from a Caribbean maybe perspective and from your geographical position, are there existing regional frameworks or platforms which allows you to cooperate with other national CERTs in this area?
Short answer, yes, but I will elaborate. First thing, I think it's important to understand not only what your international or regional collaboration mechanisms are, it's also important to understand the capacity that you have locally. My colleague mentioned this, and that goes a long way. And that happens by knowing your stakeholders, engaging with them, having a beer or a glass of wine, so that you know before you reach out to your international colleagues or international partners that you have an appreciation for your local capacity. So I'll start there. To answer the question about, yes, we do. We have other CERTs in the region. I have a colleague next to me. We certainly have other agencies. CARICOM Impacts is one of them. We've engaged with OAS. We have contacts with other agencies outside of that, the First Community, CERT Americas. They're all agencies that we can rely on and call on, not only internationally, but regionally and sub-regionally.
Thank you so much. So Carlos, yes, please, if you want to add something.
Yes, as I might add, in terms in that collaboration process that we have in the region, for example, CECIR Americas from OAS, that is a very, very important support that we have in the region. And we have conducted also different tabletop exercises, not only in national level and in sectorial levels, but also in regional level. Last year, we conducted a tabletop exercise with 10 countries from CARICOM, and I guess that gave us the visibility and the possibility to collaborate and exchange information, and not only information related in technical matters, but also in lessons learned. And we can have a clear vision about the context of the other countries. So in the case that we have to help them, we have to be clear to what is the context of also in the national ones. If you have your community, you have to know that what is the context of each one of the organizations. So in the cross-border collaboration, you have to understand the context of the other country. For example, in the case of Costa Rica, we collaborate with them. Also, they share with us the different indicators of compromise, and that's why we can prevent a similar attack last year, because we look in our system, in our networks, the different indicators of compromise. We bring on board the different partners, the commercial partners from the private sector, Cisco, Microsoft, Fortinet, all of them, and we tell them, hey, we have a problem with our neighbors. We want to prevent that we have. And we are seeing the same activity here in our cyberspace, Dominican cyberspace. And we took the prevent measures to mitigate those incident, I guess in a prevent way.
Yes, please, Smitria.
Thank you, Carlos. So I think also it's important for us to speak on, for example, like the Bahamas countries that may not already have a crisis management plan with established relationships in place that are formal. And what do we do when those relationships aren't formal and they're not agreements established? I think it's important that we speak to just informal relationships that we will build with our sister and brother CERTs within the region, with vendors that we may know, with other government and sectorial CERTs, and then to my point earlier, understanding the local capacity and the local ecosystem so that you can be able to call on those persons even though there's not a formal agreement in place. Because the reality is, for many of us, many countries, they're either in the process or maybe haven't started yet, and there's room for us to work in a space that is not fully and formally developed.
Thank you so much. Yes, Sanusi, please.
I wanted to mention also to leverage on existing protocols. We have so many out there. For example, confidence building measures of the OSCE, the OAS, and the ARF. And in our sub-region, which is ECOWAS, we are coming up, I think we already drafted, not even I think, we already drafted 18 confidence building measures at advanced stage. So when we leverage on these things, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And this is very essential for us to build trust and confidence and have mechanisms in place, effective mechanisms to share information, you know. And also, when we look at the AU Malabo, maybe so many people notice, there is an Article 28, subsection 2 and 3. Subsection 1 talks about mutual legal assistance. 2 talks about exchange of information. And 3 talks about means of cooperation, but all under international cooperation. Now, when you look at 2, exchange of information, it says states parties should ensure or shall ensure that they put in place established institutions that will share information relevant to cyber threats and vulnerability assessments, such as CSARTs and SARTs. So we have something to leverage on. And when you look at the AU Malabo Convention, it's already in force. Now, when you go to subsection 3, it talks about means of cooperation. It says state parties shall use existing means of international cooperation to respond to cyber threats, to improve cybersecurity, as well as to provide a dialogue between stakeholders, you know. So all of these things is geared towards confidence building measures, sharing information, and it's key. In our case, I forgot to mention, when the CBG, the central bank attack happened, so we had to broadcast mitigation strategies and even the news of the ransomware. But we had to leverage on ECOWAS through its project, which is called the Organized Crime West African Response for Cybersecurity and Cybercrime, an EU-funded project, to broadcast to member states. So member states were prepared in the eventuality or likelihood of the outspread of the attack, they can contain it. So these are very, very important things that we need to take into account. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting. Yes, Tariq.
When I am a hacker, I see that all the hackers community helps me. And if I need some assistance, they all jump into it and help me. But when I work for the government process is very difficult. So what happens is that if I am trying to ask cooperation, collaboration with the government, it doesn't come so easily. And there are a lot of processes. You have to go to the foreign ministry then tells it to the home ministry, then internal ministry goes it to the ICT division or CERT to get an opinion, and but by that time the whole trail is gone. So United Nations is building drafting a cyber security document. And I have attended online 3 of those preparatory meetings, but I have told them that you are missing this very key issue of immediate collaboration and information sharing. But even in the last draft, I haven't seen that to be included. So we can at least ask the United Nations UNODC to include such information sharing in the document so that the world can share these information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tariq. Before I turn to the public and to the audience, let me ask you the last question. And I would like to ask each of you. I think we are in the excellent place here that the implementers meet the donors meet the beneficiary countries, and so on and so forth. So I would like to ask you to reflect and touch on what are the key needs from your country's perspective, which are needed to be addressed in order for you to be more resilient and more effective in handling those large-scale cybersecurity incidents. And I would like to start with you, Samitria.
You keep this. Okay, good, perfect. So from CERT-BS perspective, and I just had a conversation earlier about our needs, they are constantly evolving. So my first need is to be a part of the actual offering. I want to be a co-designer. I want to share with you so that what you're offering me is scaled to CERT-BS. So that's the first ask. From there, I want to be able to show you the progression and the evolution of that need, as well as I want that need to not only reflect me, because I'm just one CERT and I need my counterparts and my regional counterparts to be a part of that need. So it needs to be reflective of my community, both locally and internationally. So to be more specific, I need training like everyone else. I need money like everyone else.
What else?
I need resources and knowledge transfer, capacity building like everyone else. I need funding for tools. I need expert advice on policy and framework. And then if anyone can make this happen, I certainly need some push in getting my legislation approved. So there are tons of needs. Where do I need them today? With the new CERT, and what I may need tomorrow, I need you to be a part of that journey with me as I evolve as a national CERT.
Thank you. Carlos?
Yes, I think that the most important thing that we need from the different international organizations is the lesson learned. I guess those lesson learned we can leverage at the national level, and we can implement and have the same results that they have in other countries. Actually, we can collaborate with each other. And what we need as a country to be more resilient, I'm not going to mention the different technical stuff. I will limit it in 4 of them. First of all, a solid legal framework. Secondly, decision makers' leadership. Third, integration of the different sectors and all the stakeholders. Trust between all the sectors. And the last one, compliance. And to achieve the compliance, you need the solid legal framework, the leadership at the decision maker level, and the integration of all the people. You have to bring everybody on board. And when you have those 4 elements, you can be resilient. And you don't have to talk in technical words. You only need that 4 ingredients.
Thank you. No,
Yes, from my side, I don't know where to start because I think the money is very important, the resources.
Yeah, you have Amazon wish list.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. But actually, if you get an entire population, I know it's impossible, but at least if you get 80% of your population aware about cybersecurity and cybercrime, that will really help mitigate a lot of cyber incidents. Because there's this preventive approach and more proactive. So awareness raising needs to be rigorous. We need to reinforce, and it needs to be gradual. It needs to be regular. To do that, you need resources to do, because to take a sample size of, let's say, a percentage of a population within a rural region, and then you educate them, and then they educate others. It's effective, I know, but what would be most effective is to use different approaches towards awareness raising. So we need resources to do that. Another thing is capabilities. I always say cybersecurity cannot be strengthened from a single point, but from multiple fronts and through collaborative efforts. And to do that, you need public-private partnership. As he's saying, we got to government, nothing is working. So in the AU Malibu Convention, under the same means of cooperation that I was talking about, it emphasizes intergovernmental cooperation, public-private partnership as well. So we can leverage on these things, because the private sector has the expertise. But how do we go about it? That's the question. It has to be a win-win situation, but again, it has to be something that is also feasible, and it's tailored to the needs of our countries. So this is kind of my wish list, but again, supply chain security. If we look at Africa, how many countries have the ability from hardware to software to be able to check your supply chain and then that it is secure? We don't have that. So these are things we need. We need SOCs, we need CERTs, we need a lot of things. And we need the political will to go, and we need to translate our terminologies of cybersecurity in the indigenous languages so that our people can quickly grasp it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And Tariq.
Thank you. He was talking about 4 pillars, but he actually missed one pillar, that is the R&D. Because when you are doing CERT or cybersecurity, you should try to do your own R&D, because there are some issues which are local to you, and which, when you do R&D, you open up to many new avenues, and you can develop something which will be helpful and can be shared among the community and also between the countries. So that's important. And the other thing is that when you have a cyber attack, you need to have a single point, focal point to talk to the media. We have unfortunate incidents in Bangladesh. We have seen all the law enforcement agencies are competing to come up with news. All the media are competing to come up with some news, and all the news are very conflicting. So people get scared. In one of the incident, the CERT Bangladesh put up an alert that there is a chance of attack on the financial institutions. So one person came up on the TV and said, it's not that there is a chance of attack, but all the banks have been emptied, and the people were rushing to the bank to see if the money is there or not. So we have to give what you call is a clarification that all banks are safe and to keep the citizen calm. And now we have a set computer or crisis emergency team where all information to the press will go through one person, and there is an alternate person. If he is not, number 1 is not there, number 2 should be there, number 2 is not there, number 3 is there. So we have a list of 5 persons who are the alternate 5 persons who will do the media briefing. So that's also very important for the crisis management, because you don't want to create panic in the country. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's turn now to the public and yes.
Thank you for that. Now I have five. I hope you don't mind. I will use in my next session the number 5.
Number 5. Good. So we have top 5. Excellent.
I have a top 5 now.
Okay. Now we have several questions. We have time for several questions from the audience. And I would like to start with the lady over there.
I would like for all of you to respond because it's so exciting to see a representative from different, can I say continents, right? I know the Caribbean, Latin America, but anyway. My questions are, A, in all your locations, do you locally train your staff? Because you sound American, you know what I mean? So were you trained in the Caribbean or in all your locations? Or do you literally have to go to the Western world to be trained in cybersecurity? So do we have the capacity locally to train? That's the first thing. Secondly, when threats happened, was it from local hackers, or when you eventually found out the threats, were they from international hackers? Were you able to identify who the hackers were? And I don't know if it happened in the other countries, but we talked about the Gambia and Bangladesh, so maybe the others might have a response to that. Let me stick to those two, and then I might have a counter.
Thank you so much. The question about training. I would like to Carlos. Yes, please.
I can start for that. In our case, in Dominican Republic, for example, we have the LAC4 Center, the Cyber Capacity Building, Latin American Cyber Capacity Building Center, and with the support of the European Union and the AU CyberNet project, we have established a train-the-trainer program. So we have developed a local talent and local competencies in our country. And we want to reach the level where we can have the competence and the capacity in each government organization, and the national CERTs becomes the second line of defense, not the first one. And related to the hackers, I cannot respond that. But yes, actually, every country have a lot of hackers, ethical and not ethical hackers. You have to discover it. You have to mix it with the community, with the technical community, because you have a lot of resources, maybe, that you don't know that they exist.
Maybe, Sanusi, I would like to ask you about the attribution. Maybe you can also reply to this one.
That's for me?
Sanusi. Thank you.
Yes, this is a very kind of important question, kind of sensitive also at the same time. Because public attribution, you really need to, even though in international law you don't require proof, but it's important to establish a base. And normally the cybercrime units of law enforcement are in charge of that. So, but there was a claim in the dark web of an organization that has done it. So in the dark web, how can you, you say it's from this jurisdiction or this jurisdiction, and it could be a chain work. So it's difficult to pinpoint until you go through the digital forensics and trace where the hacker is. And when that happens, until the perpetrator is apprehended, you don't want to jeopardize your investigation. But again, for such successful attacks to happen, it's a combination of so many things. First, you attack vectors, you attack surfaces. If you have vulnerabilities in your systems, that allows the attacker to do what he does, like ransomware. It doesn't come overnight. For example, I'm going to give you an example. If you have a novice user within an institution who is not cyber hygiene or cyber sensitive or cyber, aware, he or she may click on the wrong button that will implant a backdoor. Now, this backdoor may be used by the attacker to escalate privileges and do whatever he wants, and then he can spread ransomware. So these are possibilities that happen, but tracing the criminal, I'll say, okay, this is the organization that's claiming, but where are they from? Now, when you attribute, you may attribute to their claim directly of the name and group that they are saying, but your information needs to be adequate, not to cause panic. So these are very, very important. You know, we need to understand the thin lines. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions we have? One more we have, just one question. So, yes, please.
Okay. I'm Laurent Bagui, and I'm with the C3SA, and we tend to organize for the Africa region the Cyber 912 competition. It's basically a crisis management competition between students. So I think there is a European one, and there is an African one, and there is an American one, but then I sometimes judge in that competition. So basically what it does is to create a situation, and students are supposed to come up with answers, solutions as it goes. So my question here would be about how to build up, because that's students, you know, they are at university, how to build up some sort of civil defense, or how do you go about getting to that? Because he was talking about that. When you are talking about cooperation between government agencies, it becomes a complication. If you don't have your public ready, more can happen. But I will stop here. That's the question.
Samitre would like to? Yes.
Is he asking how to build a civil defense using students? Is that the crux of the question?
Yeah, using students is just that as they go out as in the professional world, they go out and then they go out knowing that they will be able to answer if there is something like that happening.
So I have a long version to this answer. So bear, it's okay. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay. So the short version is that awareness and education needs to be a priority, and it has to happen at every level. One of the things that I am very sensitive to is the exposure to risk that we provide for children, and at every level. Whom I call the digital underserved or not included, right up to adults. And the issue there is, if we were going to talk about defense, before we can get to defense is far off. We first need to talk about baseline cyber hygiene and education and awareness. And it has to not only start from the level from the kiddies, but it also needs to be at this level, decision makers and policy makers. We need to make them aware why cybersecurity is so important. So we're sitting here having this conversation, but if we were to ask this question to everyone on our panel, a big chunk of what may be a gap for us is those who are making decisions, who are signing on the dotted line, they don't have a true appreciation for cyber defense. And so therefore, because of that, it can make our task, our job, our assignment harder than it needs to be, and when it comes to developing defense, if that answers your question.
And we would like to add that you have to define the real needs. Because if you left the decision to the student, all of them want to be hackers, pen tester, red teamers, all of them. Today, all of the students want to be red teaming, and we don't need more red teaming. We need more policy makers, vulnerability manager, analytic skills, defense skills, the blue team, for example. But today, everybody wants to be a pen tester. Everybody wants to break something. and the real need that we have is that we have to establish legal frameworks, standards, compliance, vulnerability management. That's that we need now. That our compromise, our leadership is to conduct those students to take advance in the area that every country needs.